On the day of the farewell and welcome party, I arrived at the reserved restaurant right on time, as I had informed everyone. However, no one showed up even after the scheduled time had passed. Finally, I received a call, and to my surprise, it was from Steve, the department head. "Why do I have to drink with a loser? Know your place." After saying that, Steve burst into uncontrollable laughter, as if he couldn't hold it in any longer. I was so infuriated by his maliciousness that I was trembling with anger. "You guys don't want to work with me anymore, right? Well, none of you need to come to work from tomorrow." "What?" Steve asked back, sounding annoyed, as I suddenly changed my tone. "You've gotten way too cocky. Well, look forward to tomorrow. My name is Mark. I'm a middle-aged man in my late 50s, having been in the workplace for 30 years. Having worked at the same company since my graduation, I was considering settling down for a peaceful life, but an unexpected turning point arrived. Despite my age, I found myself starting work at a new company. My new chosen company manufactures electronics and is especially known for its cameras. It's such a major player in camera industry. This is the place that comes to mind. Its products, sought after for both their precision and ease of use, are popular not only among camera enthusiasts but also among beginners. Although losing market share to phones at one point, the company has recently been gaining new customers. This is probably because tour cameras and retro cameras are becoming fashionable. Gratefully, the factory is busy operating every day, with new products being announced every season. Today is the day I start work at my new workplace. Even though I'm in my late 50s, I'm just like any other newcomer here, knowing nothing. Working with young people who could be the age of my children together, it's a lie to say I'm not anxious. But the excitement of trying something new is a feeling I haven't experienced in a long time, and I was fidgety from the morning. Upon arriving at work, I was immediately guided to my department. There were a few other employees joining at the same time as me, all of them fresh faces in brand new recruit suits. Standing alongside a row of young people, I was the only one who felt the difference in age, but also thrilled with anticipation and nervousness. In this new workplace, I will be learning the job from scratch, just like them. My mentor was an employee about the age of my son. After a general explanation of the company's philosophy and business, we were briefed on our job duties. The employee guiding me seemed a little uncomfortable instructing someone in their late 50s at first, but we gradually warmed up to each other after talking for a while. I was introduced to many other employees, from a veteran with 30 years of service to a female employee soon going on maternity leave. I exchanged greetings with many employees. Everyone was kind to me, an old guy like myself, and I was touched. But there was one troublesome individual. That was the department head, Steve. Steve is in his late 50s, just like me. He's favored by the executive director, Michael, and always carries himself with overflowing confidence. He seemed quite motivated at first, as he came to encourage us new recruits. However, listening to his conversation with my mentor, I couldn't help but notice many concerning remarks. "Hey, bring me a coffee," he ordered in a commanding tone. The employee was in the middle of conversation with me, but left the room as ordered, without finishing his explanation to me. Steve, looking satisfied as he watched the employees retreating back, added, "Hurry up and run, you know that, right?" and then started smoking with a content look. This company is supposed to be smoke-free indoors. Yet, unable to speak up to Steve, who is their superior, the other employees simply turned a blind eye. A pregnant female employee looked uncomfortable in the room. She probably wanted to avoid the smoke but couldn't leave her seat during work hours. I couldn't help but be concerned and reluctantly approached Steve. "Excuse me, but could you please smoke in the smoking area?" The employees around me became noticeably restless all at once. Steve immediately frowned and said, "What? What are you talking about?" "My name is Mark and I've recently joined a company. I believe some people might be sensitive to cigarette smoke, so I'd appreciate it if you could put out your cigarette." I could feel a surge of anger brewing in Steve's eyes. With an attitude that suggested he wouldn't tolerate any defiance, I braced myself for trouble. "Please put out your cigarette now. I was just informed that, according to company policy, smoking inside the building is prohibited." When I reiterated my request, Steve shockingly kicked a nearby desk with all his might. The surrounding area fell into a dead silence, and everyone was looking at me and Steve. "You seem to have a lot to say for yourself. Do you even know who I am? With just one word from me, I can make or break your future. You do understand that, right?" Leaving those words behind, Steve left the room without waiting for my response. The concerned looks of my colleagues converged on me. Who was left behind? I tried to reassure them. "I apologize for the disturbance. Perhaps I spoke out of turn." The employees assured me it was okay, but their faces clearly showed unease. Seeing their reactions, I felt anxious about how I should behave at the company from now on. Unfortunately, my fears turned out to be true. I became a target for Steve's animosity. Though I worked at the head office, Steve would find reasons to visit my department. After his visits, I would often find the documents I left on my desk thrown away in the trash can. My cup of tea would be spilled as well. It was Steve doing these all childish pranks. The other employees, unable to protect me, began turning a blind eye to the harassment instead of addressing it. Getting close to me might make them the next target. An employee who had been helping me with my work was told by Steve in passing, "You better choose who you work with more carefully." As rumors spread, people started avoiding me. Now, even for essential work-related communications, nobody would speak to me directly, opting to send emails instead. Employees told a lie about meeting times, and they began refusing work requests I made. It seemed as though Steve had ordered it, turning the whole department against me. I was frustrated by the situation. I had just started working at this new company, full of enthusiasm and excitement like in my early days. Just as I was beginning to realize the advantages of my changing job, I didn't think that I would be targeted by Steve for no reason. But Steve's harassment persisted. Eventually, it wasn't just about obstructing my work. He began to insult me directly. "Oh, our company really got the short end of the stick. Who quits their job in their 50s? What did he do to get kicked out of his last job? Must have been a real dead weight, so they told him they didn't need a burden," he would say, making baseless accusations and laughing to himself. No matter what I retorted, Steve would come back with 100 times more sarcasm. I gritted my teeth and held on, thinking there was nothing else I could do. Steve will probably lose interest in harassment towards me eventually. I just need to endure until then. As I continued to work with that thought, Steve's visits gradually decreased, just as I had hoped. Then, employees began to work with me again, and little by little, some started to talk to me. I hoped that the workplace would become enjoyable again if things continued this way. That's when the incident happened. One day, as I was about to leave work, Steve approached me. "Hey Mark, we're having a welcome and farewell party tomorrow. On behalf of new employees, you're the one who makes the reservation. Don't pick a lousy place, or you'll regret it, got it?" Steve was about to leave after saying his piece, but I hurriedly called out to him. "A welcome and farewell party. It is quite sudden that it will be held tomorrow. Will everyone be attending? We have about 80 people, right?" "Of course, all 80 will attend. You have a problem with what? We're going to have this party for you, and you're even complaining. I've given a useless person like you a role. Be grateful and do your job." Steve cut off my question and forcefully ordered me to make the reservation. I can feel in my heart that he is really an arrogant person who doesn't even listen to other people's convenience. However, I was honestly pleased that he was organizing a welcome and farewell party. I was expecting more harassment, so even though it came with sarcasm, I was grateful for the party. I took out my phone and started searching for a venue that could rent out their entire floor. I started calling all the reputable nearby restaurants one by one to check for availability. A small pub would have been fine for a few people, but we're talking about a large group of 80 people. And with the event being so sudden, set for the next day, it wasn't easy to find a place right away. After being turned down several times but persistently making more calls, I finally found a restaurant willing to accommodate us for a private event. The staff at the restaurant were very friendly, and the all-you-can-eat and drink menu looked delicious. I was sure that Steve and the other employees would be pleased. Looking forward to the event, I was completely blindsided by what happened next. On the day of the welcome and farewell party, I arrived at the booked restaurant exactly at the time I had informed everyone. After telling the staff, I have a reservation under the name Mark, I was led to the empty, reserved space. It looks like no one's here yet. I took the seat in the corner, feeling a sense of relief and release from tension. I hoped this welcome and farewell party would help me get closer to everyone in the office. If I just focused on my work, surely even Steve would come to understand. With these thoughts, I waited eagerly for the employees to show up. But even after the scheduled time, no one appeared. 15 minutes, then 30 minutes passed, and still, no one came through the door. The staff at the restaurant started looking anxious too, glancing at me as if they wanted to say something. Something's wrong. Do they not know where it is? I tried to contact my colleagues on my phone, but couldn't get through to anyone. No matter how many times I called, all I got was the ringing tone. Finally, I received a call, and it was from Steve. Relieved to finally get in touch, I answered the phone. "This is Mark. Nobody has shown up for the welcome and farewell party yet. It's past the start time. What's happening?" Then Steve said something unbelievable over the phone. "Mark, you're such a loser. Did you seriously think you were going to be welcomed? Why should we waste our precious time drinking with an incompetent like you? Know your place." With that, Steve burst into uncontrollable laughter. I could hear more laughters in the background. This means that several people, along with Steve, decided to bail on the event. I confronted Steve in a low voice. "So, you never planned to have the welcome and farewell party in the first place? Nobody felt like welcoming you. We just let you enjoy the dream of organizing your own welcome and farewell party, out of pity." Steve laughed even more. I was shaking with anger at the sheer malice of his actions. Steve continued to mock me. "You've already had your welcome and farewell party, so you don't need to come to the company anymore. We don't want to work with someone incompetent like you." "Is that so? This has made it very clear what kind of person you are, Steve. You don't want to work with me, right? Should I take it that everyone in the department feels the same?" Steve yelled back in annoyance as I asked, holding back my anger. "That's what I've been saying. In addition to being incompetent at your job, are you also deaf? Well, none of you need to come to work from tomorrow." "What?" Steve sounded annoyed as I suddenly changed my tone. "What is this incompetent blabbering about? Are you stupid? You've gotten way too cocky. Well, look forward to tomorrow." With that, I hung up the phone unilaterally. Steve seemed to be making a fuss on the other end, but it was no longer my concern. Afterward, I carefully considered what I should do next. The next day, there was a huge commotion at the company. People were crowding around the company notice board, frantically wondering what had happened and what it all meant. Employees from other departments also gathered, hearing the noise, making the area in front of the notice board as crowded as a station during rush hour. The notice board displayed details and reasons for disciplinary actions against employees. Disciplinary actions, including pay cuts and demotions, were taken against 79 employees from my department. What does this mean? Did you know about this, Mark? An employee, realizing I was the only one not demoted, approached me with a question. Just as I was about to answer, Steve appeared on the scene, his face beet red. He stared at the notice board as if to burn holes through it, then stormed up to me, fuming as if steam were about to burst from his head. Why should I be demoted and transferred? And why are you being announced as the new HR director? Did you pull some strings with the higher-ups? Steve, red-faced and angry yet smirking maliciously, confronted me. No, I was called to this company to be the HR director from the start. Upon hearing the truth, Steve's face turned even redder, and he began to sweat profusely. Before coming to this company, I worked in a globally renowned electronics company, specifically in the computer department. I had moved through various departments and ultimately contributed to the workplace as the HR director until I left. When I joined, it was a time when nearly half of all generations had started owning computers, and the popularity was skyrocketing. Eventually, it became an era where everyone had a personal computer, boasting tremendous sales. However, the brand faced a crisis with frequent product defects, leading to a loss of trust. At that time, as the HR director, I was entrusted with significant responsibilities and decisions, but I fought to protect our employees as much as possible. A company thrives because its employees work hard. I did my best to create a comfortable workplace, promoting young employees to executive positions and making it easier to take paid and child care leave. As a result, the turnover rate significantly dropped compared to before the defect issues, and the employees became able to work with high motivation and smiles. The company's performance made a V-shaped recovery, becoming a heartwarming story featured in the media and magazines. At that time, the camera manufacturer I now work for was one of our clients. Mr. Johnson, the president of the company, often greeted me and engaged in small talk. Hearing about my achievements, he directly recruited me, saying he wanted me to join his company. I never expected to be offered the position of HR director. As I finished my story, Steve became hilariously flustered. But you joined as a new employee. It's absurd for an HR director to be treated as a new employee. I was a complete newcomer to this company. Since I was going to be the HR director, I wanted to see the company's internal situation with my own eyes. I said this with a smile. I never expected to uncover such an astonishing fact. I couldn't imagine a department head would do such petty harassment. I ended up causing quite a trouble for the restaurant yesterday. It was when Steve, with his fists trembling, was about to retort to my words. Which one of you is Mark? You're here, aren't you, Mark? A portly middle-aged man, with his face contorted in anger, approached us. It was Michael, who had favored on Steve. I am Mark. How may I help you? The area fell silent and tense as I responded. Then Michael, with his face turning beet red, started yelling angrily. What does it mean that Steve has been demoted? How dare you make such a decision without talking to me, the executive director? I've joined as the new HR director. Therefore, I made the necessary personnel changes. That's an abuse of authority. I won't accept it. I've heard from Steve about the troubles caused by an utterly incompetent subordinate. How can such a person be the HR director? Michael seemed ready to complain further. But I calmly presented something. Good timing. I had something to discuss with you as well. Here's the bill from the restaurant where yesterday's welcome and farewell party was supposed to be held. It's the cancellation fee for 80 people. Should I send this bill to Steve, or would you prefer to take responsibility for your subordinate's mistake, Michael? Michael slapped the bill onto the floor. And while spitting, he said, "This must be your harassment, isn't it? Do you have any proof that Steve canceled it?" I have the proof right here. I calmly took out my phone and played the recorded conversation. It was the conversation with Steve from when he bailed on the event yesterday. As the recording played, the murmurs around us grew louder. As you can hear, I have the proof, so please pay the bill. I'll definitely crush you. It was when Michael's eyes bulged with anger. It's quite lively here, but what seems to be the matter? Mr. Johnson. It was Mr. Johnson who appeared. Seeing him, Michael began to fidget nervously. Now everyone, could you please return to your work? Let's give our best effort today as well. At his request, the employees surrounding us went back to their departments. After a while, only I, Steve, Michael, and Mr. Johnson remained. Michael glared at me with sharp eyes. Mr. Johnson, this man Mark has caused tremendous trouble for Steve. Trouble? Could you elaborate for me? As Mr. Johnson faced me, Steve and Michael both smirked with a look of confidence. They must have thought he would take their side. I calmly began to explain. Michael here planned to promote Steve to department head by bribing the former HR director to do his bidding. Michael frantically started to refute my accusation. Mr. Johnson, his story is nonsense. He's a terrible man who lies effortlessly to protect himself. I have evidence right here. I calmly handed the investigative documents I brought to him. As he read, his expression grew grim, while Michael and Steve turned pale and began to tremble. Knowing Michael's actions, I couldn't overlook this as the new HR director, which is why I made the personnel changes. After hearing my explanation, Mr. Johnson sighed wearily. Thank you, Mark. I had heard rumors about Michael and his group's actions before, so regrettably, I understand now after seeing the investigation documents. Hearing this, Michael collapsed to his knees, and Steve stood agape, speechless. Mr. Johnson glanced at them, then reassuringly patted my shoulder. Only the pitiful cries of Michael and Steve echoed in the room. Later, Michael, who would have been fired under normal circumstances, was demoted to a regular employee and transferred to a remote factory, thanks to Mr. Johnson's leniency. However, it seems that even without his title, he couldn't shake off the habit of acting superior, which he had developed over the years as an executive. Even at the factory, he continued to issue bossy orders, which apparently made him quite unpopular with the local staff. A few months later, he was sued by a subordinate and was finally dismissed for disciplinary reasons. Without any severance pay, his life became quite difficult. Steve was also demoted to a regular employee and transferred to another branch. However, the story of his actions at the head office quickly spread, making his life there unbearable, leading him to quit his job. After losing his job, he was divorced by his wife and had to hand over the house as alimony, leaving him with nothing. Nobody knows his whereabouts and what he's doing now. As for the employees who mocked me under Steve's influence, it was deemed they couldn't stand up to him. The company decided to rehire those who sincerely regretted their actions. Finally, with all the turmoil settled, I began my work as the HR director. Today, as a start, I plan to visit each department to listen to the employees' requests. The company thrives because of the hard work of its employees. Therefore, I want to continue striving to create a good company where employees can work comfortably. Respecting each other and building a supportive relationship among colleagues is crucial for the company's growth. I aim to quietly support those working on the front lines, ensuring they can work with smiles on their faces.